I was thumbing through your book and I saw that statement you make at the very beginning when you're writing about olive oil. And you say, as passionate as I am about Italian food and wine, I'm most obsessed with encouraging the use of high quality olive oil. Why is this so important?
Nothing can change the flavor of anything you eat every day when you switch to a better and higher quality olive oil. A fried egg, a leaf of lettuce, a drizzle on top of anything you have left over. Nothing can change the flavor of anything you eat more than a better quality extra virgin olive oil.
Tell us about the types of oil you keep in your own kitchen, the range of flavors that you seek. What do you have?
I have almost everything that you can imagine in my pantry, lots of them, and I'm forever curious about why an olive oil from here or there tastes this way or that way. Just like wine. I mean, can you imagine drinking the same wine every day? Every dish deserves a completely different type of olive oil because it depends on what is it that you're doing to it and what ingredients are you putting together on your dish. I'm thinking about the things that you do to the olive oil, not what you don't do to it. I'm focused on the positives of the olive oil, not on the negatives, which unfortunately a lot of people do.
Yeah, I mean, so you know that there's this range of flavor in olive oil, depending on when it's harvested, where it's grown. But so many chefs use just one oil in their kitchen. How can you persuade them to experiment, to explore more of the variety in olive oil?
You know one of the worst things that can happen to your palate is consistency. When everything tastes the same and every dish will have the same flavor. There's nothing better than to experiment with wonderful olive oils that then, depending on the time of the year, depending on what season it is, depending on how you feel, you just either cook with this, cook with that, do this to it, or finish it with that. So I think the most important thing is to just think of olive oil as the ultimate ingredient, because that will exalt or take your food to the next level.
Yeah, you made that other statement in your book where you said the quality of the oil used is as important to a recipe's success as any of the other ingredients. Could you talk about that a bit more? How do you convince chefs of that?
Convincing chefs has taken me 32 years, and I'm still on it, as you well know. But the convincing chefs to switch to a better and higher quality olive oil has almost been my life challenge and my entire sort of mantra. It takes until you put it in somebody's mouth for them to say, "Oh, yum, I didn't know that broccoli tasted that good," until you drizzle it with some really good extra virgin olive oil made in a way that would actually exalt the flavors of that oil. I think the worst thing that we're doing to ourselves is just homogenizing our taste buds. It's just making everything taste the same. And I love to think of olive oil as a roller coaster ride. You know, every time I say, "Oh, maybe I'll use this one today, or maybe I'll use that one today," and then you discover new flavors, new nuances, and new emotions you never had.
Yeah, another thing that struck me in your book was that you talk about using olive oil generously. I think so many American cooks, they talk about drizzling or a few drops, please, would you talk about that a bit more?
One must overpour. You it's why not splurge when you are actually doing something that it's absolutely delicious with something that is perfectly yummy and delicious and green and full of energy, and I can't imagine why would you want to skim on that kind of flavor. It's actually the most delicious green fat energy that we can put in our body. So just overpour.
You have already hinted a little bit that there are different oils for different dishes in your mind. Let's get specific. Would you talk about some examples of where you use a certain type of oil with a certain type of dish?
If I have the desire to have steamed fish, let's say, I found a delicious Dover sole the other day, which was outrageously beautiful. And then I just poached it, or I used my little steamer and I just put it on my plate. And I used a very mild, on the verge of sweet olive oil. Then all of a sudden I found some incredible arugula. But when I tasted it raw first. I went like, oh my God, this thing is so pungent. It's so spicy. I mean, it was delicious, right? And then I said, oh, I need something that is not going to make it even more bitter. But so I chose a little bit of a more aromatic, olive oil that would exalt that aroma. In the winter time, I feel that when I do my first steamed broccoli, I want to make that broccoli really angry and bitter, and because I feel that I need to store that bitter flavor into my body and my taste buds. So I kick it up a notch, like they say, right, in America. And so it all depends on how you feel that olive oil will play with the flavor profile of the dish that you're making. Remember, olive oil is an ingredient. It's not the sort of like, it doesn't, nobody does that whole sensory tasting and sniffing and swirling and spitting and those horrible tasting noises that people make, because you have to use it. It's a food item. It's part of your dish. And so that's why I keep on going back to that thing of it will take your food to the next level if you choose appropriately an olive oil that befits the flavor profile of the dish that you're making, including ice cream. As you well know, I have, one of my most imitated recipes is just putting olive oil with basil and fleur de sel on gelato.
And what type of olive oil works best in that example?
That one, I would like something that you can really taste and is very robust, because what happens is then when it touches that cold surface, that oil becomes almost like close to gelatinous, and it becomes a taste bomb as well. So it becomes umami. The greenness of the very robust olive oil, together with the salt and the sweetness of the gelato, to me makes it that nowhere land in our taste bud, that tastes really good.
More examples of dishes where the olive oil really makes the dish soar.
Oh,
Maybe some specific, rather than some specific dishes.
Specific. So in a bagna cauda, because it's going to have an incredible amount of flavor from the anchovies and the garlic, you would use a mild flavor olive oil, because the olive oil is going to be the emulsifier. The same thing with a pesto. If you're making a summer beautiful pesto and your basil is very pungent, you don't want to. I mean, the olive oil becomes the emulsifier. You're going to add garlic, pine nuts, and lots of basils and parmigiano. So you need a mild one. If you're going to move up the ladder and make a spaghetti with olive oil, garlic, and pepperoncino, and that olive oil is going to be the only emulsifier, that becomes the sauce. You want to make sure that you're using a really good medium range olive oil, because that's going to taste better. And so if then you move even higher up the ladder to have the oil. So for me, I consider it oils that are being cooked and oils that you're eating raw. So mild, or that could be in the raw with the pesto, then the ones that you cook with, and then you get into the ones of my salad. Now I'm starting to pay attention. Now I'm starting to go into the medium range, because sometimes you just find greens, or you bought too many greens, and then you need to liven them up. You need something to lift their flavor profile in that little mixed green salad. And then you need definitely a robust olive oil during the winter times in order to make sure that those beans and the broccoli and the kale salads and all these dandelion greens and long cooked stews will be finished with a beautiful drizzle of olive oil that is raw and that is not cooked.
Would you also talk about olio nuovo a bit, and let's educate chefs a little bit about how to use that, how to maximize, because it's pretty expensive. How do you maximize the impact of that olio nuovo?
Well, the thing is that olio nuovo, the whole idea of olio nuovo became when basically I had it for the first time 32 years ago here in Tuscany, and I had it for the first time raw at a most intense phase. And here, everybody celebrates the happening of olio nuovo when it just burns down your throat. And so we started to bring it in and by air. And the whole idea is that entire celebration around here we're going into the winter months. This is when we need to celebrate this rite of passage that we're going to go into of we need as much green inside of us as possible. And so the sooner the better. That's what it's called. And I call it olio ASAP. We need to overpour, overdrench, and my chin is extremely glossy during those months.
What other characteristics are you looking for in the olive oils you purchase for Manicaretti, apart from that, mild, medium, robust?
I think that one of the things that has interests me so much over the 32 years of buying and shipping oils across the Atlantic from different parts of Italy, what interests me is the concept that not many people would apply to olive oil of terroir. And I think that that's what is very important. We need to understand that two producers next to each other in the same area will make the same blend of olives, but would taste extremely different. It's just like wine. We have to remember, you can make 100% Chardonnay in the Napa Valley, but they all taste different, right? So I'm very interested in flavor profiles and how do they use them first when I find them, and when I taste with them, and how do they fit as a harmony of flavors within everything else that I have tasted. So, we're not actively looking for more olive oil and looking for more producers, but when it comes to the point that I tasted something in Sicily that was full of tomato leaf, full of tomato. It was like a green tomato explosion. And I had said no to them before. I tasted that oil and I said, oh my God, this is incredible. I never tasted that before. And we're doing really well with that oil because it fits that flavor that I want to pour over my tomatoes during the hot summer months on the insalata caprese, on a tomato salad, on panzanella, or on anything that has summer flavors, because it's almost like on the verge of sweet, but it doesn't taste that way. Back in November when I tasted it, I got to taste that way in March.
I love hearing you talk about choosing oils and to some extent based on the season, that in winter you want different oils than you do in summer. Would you just talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I sort of feel that, there's a correlation. I don't know what it is in my nostrils, in my mouth, or in my stomach, or with a produce. I'm extremely seasonal compared to most. I refuse to eat tomatoes in the winter time, and I overindulge in broccoli, dandelions, and bitter greens instead. So and that's when usually the olive oil has been freshly pressed, and to me those oils, they scream bitter, which unfortunately in America has such a bad connotation, that word. Bitter in Italy is a beautiful word. It's called amaro. And amaro can have two connotations, right? It's bad amaro, such as a burnt toast, or a good amaro, like arugula or kale, or that after dinner drink that you need, the artichoke hearts and everything in between. So I love that kind of bitter. Bitter is a beautiful flavor. Unfortunately, I don't understand why in America has such a bad connotation and such a bad rap. I mean, it's good for you. It's medicinal to me. It's almost like balsamic. It feels like I'm storing green energy to get me through the cold, dreary winter months. I'm not concentrating on the negatives. I'm only looking for the positives. So how could I use that really wonderful bitter flavor and serve it on what? So I put it on sliced steak, on beans, on kale, on long stewed soups. It's you gotta take the positive of it and push it that way. And then as the winter comes into spring, and then the asparagus have come into the stores, and to my vegetable lady, or here we have like agretti or asparagus or fava beans. Well, by then you had too much of that, and so you're looking for a little bit of a nuance of green grass and more softer greens, and so that you can taste that. So you put them at an equal level, that green asparagus to that olive oil, so that they pair beautifully. And then as the summer comes about, well, the olive oil has already started to become a wonderful, soft, delicious, unctuous nectar. And the tomatoes, I mean, they deserve something sweeter. And so I move into more sweeter, more kind of like candy like. I mean, the one that I drink by the spoon, because they're it's more of a sauce, but it has to be a good sauce. It's that thing of it becomes an enhancer of the flavors of the tomatoes, the mozzarella, the basil, and it doesn't cover them. So, and then by the time that September and October comes about, I'm usually out of olive oil and I'm waiting for the next one.
A beautiful answer. Thank you. Let's end with a bit of a fantasy where you're having some people over for dinner. Let's imagine that they're vegetarians and you're going to make a meal for them that would show sort of the progression of olive oils, how you use olive oil maybe in each dish. Can you fantasize about a menu?
What I would do is I would set up a meal that takes them on a roller coaster ride of extra virgin olive oil flavors. First, you start with something that would allow them to be exposed to a really great olive oil, and it would be in the form of many types of salads, great pinzimonio, which is a plate of crudités with a bowl in the middle where they can dip the crudités that has a little bit of fleur de sel inside. And, anything that is a cornucopia of dishes of everything raw and only with the best olive oil you have. Because you want to make them go, wow, this is so incredible. I never tasted anything like this before. By then, their taste buds are so glaring and green and, so alive. You want to serve them maybe a little bit of pasta with pesto, right? The basil, it's, there's a little bit of, it's still raw. You're still eating raw olive oil because you're not cooking it. And so you're tossing the pasta and with some green beans and little cube potatoes, like a Rodin Autentico, right? So you just, and by the way, that picture, an Autentico is to scale. So that's one portion in it. So raw pesto, steamed green beans, potatoes, and troffie, you toss it. You're eating raw. You're still eating raw olive oil. Then you have a wonderful platter of grilled eggplant or grilled vegetables. Let's say you do there's a wonderful way that you can do like a lasagna made out of vegetables, right? So lots of grilled vegetables all piled up on each other, and then you cut them in square. That they've been baked with lightly brushed in a mild olive oil, and then you bake them. But at the dinner table, you're drizzling really great olive oil at the end. A medium olive oil would be great. And then for dessert, I would make lemon granita, and I would drizzle some fantastically delicious sweet olive oil, and then tear up some basil leaves if you want, or mint, or any kind of wild herb you have in your garden. So,
wow, what a meal! That sounds beautiful, Rolando. It's been great chatting with you.
oh my God, I'm so honored, Janet. I'm so honored you thought of me.
Well, you would be a great spokesperson for lavish use of olive oil.
How can we try to focus on what it is instead what it isn't? Let's focus on what you taste, just like what it is on wine tasting, right? Let's try to figure out a way that we can stop the compare and contrast game and tell me what is it that you're tasting and what you want to do with it. Because I think that once we get over that hurdle, people will move to the next level because nobody will be judging them. There's no right or wrong or taste. Taste is subjective, it's not objective.